I'm Ashton Addison from EventChain for InvestmentPitch Media and the Crypto Coin Show. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Stephen Poo, the founder of Taraxa. Stephen, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time to be here today.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure to be invited, and I've been a longtime fan of your show, Ashton. Great to be here.
Thank you so much, Stephen. That's wonderful. And I'm really excited for Taraxa, and I know your team's working on a lot of different things right now. If we could kick off the show with just an overview and the focus of Taraxa, and what are some of the problems that your team is solving for?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk about that. So Taraxa is really designed to track informal transactional agreements. What does that mean, right? I mean, the vast majority of agreements that are generated in the world today are informal, right? So people are texting each other, chatting with each other, giving each other a call and say, hey, we're going to do this. You guys, okay, well, let's just get on with it, right? So that type of agreement is often uncaptured and very difficult to verify. It's over 80% of the world's agreements are like that. I mean, it makes total sense because you and I are not walking around signing legal contracts every single day, every single moment of the day, right?
Yeah.
So these type of agreements are very convenient, but they lack clarity and can often lead to a lot of confusion and disputes, right? Adding a lot of friction to our business. So that's what Taraxa is really designed to solve, is to make these agreements very capturable, easy to capture, and highly verifiable with the tamper-proof who said what when, audit law. Yeah.
Definitely. And that's a great introduction. Thank you, Stephen. And I completely agree that no one has the time to go around and get a notary or get a lawyer involved for a simple informal transaction, or even to sign things. Most of the time, it's a handshake or just a word. So
Exactly.
I'm curious more on if you could elaborate into the platform and how are you making this more formal in terms of capturing that informal transaction without adding in all of the complicated steps.
Yeah, sure. So we have several platforms. So the one that I'll tell you about is Marinate, which is designed to track informal agreements that are made between people. So the first principle that we have is that we actually get you where you are, right? So for example, you and I are texting each other, and I text you and I say, "Hey, Ashton, we're gonna, I owe you, a beer, and I'll buy you a beer next Friday, right?" And then I would CC Marinate, and then Marinate would then just shoot back the message and say, hey, we received an agreement, and do you agree or disagree? And
Hmm.
that's right there in your text, right? You click on it, it takes you to a web app, and then you don't need to do anything. And you just come back and keep on texting. And that's it. So number one, the user experience is very, very frictionless. If you like using texting, if you like using chat, if you like using whatever, keep using
Hmm.
whatever it is that you're using. We integrate with them and not the other way around. We don't force users to actually learn a new application, and you don't even need to download an application or register, right? The second value I think we create is that we actually add clarity, and we help bottom line these informal conversations, because you and I could be talking about, I don't know, three other things in our conversation, and there's a
Hmm.
little bit of business here that got mixed in, and it's sometimes very unclear, sort of like we walk away from the conversation having different understandings of what we agreed upon, or if we agreed upon anything at all, right?
Hmm.
So this action of actually, saying, hey, we have an agreement committed, yes or no, that adds an additional layer of clarity. Oh, this is what we agreed upon. It helps you bottom line these conversations.
Hmm.
And the third one is really the audit trail, right? So what happens when you click on that agree or disagree link? Well, it takes you a web browser. In the background, there's a local private key that you're actually signing the message, right? So the message gets
Hmm.
hashed and you're signing it. And if you agree or disagree, it all gets uploaded into the blockchain for an audit trail. So later on, if you're any confusion, like, I show up next Friday and you're like, where's my beer? I'm like, what are you talking about? And right here. It's right here, very, very clear. I lost my phone. I don't remember the text. I deleted the text. All right, it's right here, right?
Yeah.
You said this. It's your signature. Who said what when. So this is really, really designed to help very easily capture these informal agreements, which are flying everywhere. There's no
Hmm.
centralized place for them to be stored, and also make them very, very easily verifiable, so that we really shorten the time when people are getting very, very confused about things.
Definitely, and great explanation there. And I wanted to touch further on the last part you mentioned about the audit trail, and that's sort of where the blockchain comes in. I was looking into Taraxa. You have the Aphrogenes, if that's right, the testnet in your own protocol. Can you talk about the need for a main protocol from your firm to track it, and if there's something unique about that? I know it's like a DAG mechanism.
Yeah, so I mean, I think philosophically, I just want to explain that, we very early on we recognize that if you only build applications, right, very often you become bottlenecked by the fact that you don't understand or have the capability to modify the underlying infrastructure to fit the application's needs. Blockchain technology is by no means mature or standardized or commoditized. Maybe in 10 years it will be. This right now it's not. So we need to have that capability. So that's why we built the layer one because we wanted
Mm-hmm.
that flexibility to be able to adapt it. We have a lot of interesting features built into it. I'll talk about some of the technical throughput features, and I'll talk about some of the future application-specific features we're actually going to build in. So technically speaking, the first thing that everyone needs to solve is throughput, right? So we have
Mm-hmm.
a
Yeah.
block DAG topology that actually allows us to scale throughput way beyond what single chain topologies allow without sacrificing security or decentralization. So that's a very, very interesting innovation. The second thing that we did is that we added true finality into the block DAG. And the interesting thing about adding true finality is that we're actually able to optimize the executional layer by writing into the Merkle database in a concurrent manner rather than having to do it sequentially. And that just 10x's the throughput potential.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, third, one of the interesting innovations we had is we replaced proof of work with a combination of a verifiable delay function and verifiable random function. So we reproduce a random, fair random delay of proof of work without, the Earth environmental destroying power drain. I think maybe the
Mm-hmm.
world only needs one proof of work chain. That's probably enough. So these are some of the innovations that we've created to really address the scalability problem.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the application specific things, right? For example, the later on, we're going to actually integrate these data anchoring functionalities, which is how we build these audit logs. We're going to integrate these primitives directly into the protocol layer. So it's not a generic VM interpreted kind of generic contract, but something that is at the protocol layer and can be executed much, much more quickly and much more efficiently. Another thing that we actually try to do is that very interestingly is that these data anchoring transactions are stateless transactions, which means that they don't really need to be executed in any particular order.
Mm-hmm.
Which means we can execute them concurrently without worrying that you run into a double spend or anything like that because
Yeah.
they're stateless transactions.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of these application specific features that we're actually going to build into our layer one to make sure we fully take advantage of the fact that we have the capability to modify layer one to optimize it for our application purposes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And that sounds like you're building it, with a specific purpose to make sure that these informal transactions are done properly, but in a way that doesn't necessarily need to be done in the way that it's on Ethereum, where it's costing a lot and you need to have specific orders, and because they're stateless transactions, non-related, you don't really need that exact functionality, which will make it lighter and faster and cheaper. And I'm curious a little bit more on the timing. I know you've built the testnet out, and the timing of the application as well. Where are you at right now? Is the full informal transactions live and testing on the testnet? And then as you go to the mainnet, how does that relate to the release of the application?
Right. So the main network, okay, so let's go through the application first. I mean, we spent a lot of time actually market testing the application. We piloted it with a few construction companies and actually a logistics company. Yeah, and then but that's by no means where I would say that we're not anywhere close to product market fit. It usually takes anybody anywhere between 12 to 18 months to really hit that. So where we are is that we have a working prototype of the application that has been deployed with a few test customers, and we're using it, giving us feedback. We're doing a rewrite of the application to improve its architecture, and introducing a lot more integrations with these baseline communication tools that we're talking about. So we're going to be rolling out our API layer, public API layer, and also we're going to be rolling out integrations with things like WhatsApp, WeChat, and
Mm-hmm.
Telegram, right? So I mean, if you cover WhatsApp and WeChat, that's like most of the world's chat traffic right there. We're also going to be rolling out SMS integration as well. So we want to make sure we cover all the mainstream communication tools so that people can truly basically stay using whatever tool that is they want to use. In terms of the mainnet and the testnet, is that we have a relatively stable testnet. You can't say perfectly stable until you are perfectly stable. Testnet has been running since sort of the end of last year, and it's getting more and more stable every single year. And launching a mainnet this year is one of our priorities. So we will be rolling out an incentivized testnet and staking very, very soon. Very, very soon, actually, as soon as we are able to fully stabilize our test network. Now, having these applications running on top of a test net is relatively okay as long as we have a mechanism to recover the data or retain the data even if the testnet crashes. So that's also a very, very critical thing you need to build into any blockchain network, is because you can never guarantee that it will never ever crash, right? So we do have that mechanism in place. We're in the process of refining it. So having it running on a test network, it's not really functionally any different than having it on a main network. But of course, one of the critical things we're driving when we get to mainnet is also decentralization. You have to continuously make sure that more and more people stake their coins, and actually you have a decentralized network. So these goals are not necessarily sequential. They can be done concurrently, and we are doing them concurrently, to make sure that we don't lose any time.
Definitely. Thanks for that. And I'm excited to see that product market fit continue to grow. And when I'm looking forward to the WhatsApp integration and Telegram specifically, I think a lot of people will be using that, especially people that are crypto natives that are ready to start using the functionality, because then you're reaching likely billions of people in a short amount of time. And you mentioned there that you're working on the staking really soon. I'm interested to hear about the staking, which I'm guessing has to do with the Taraxa Tara coin, and also just overall about the coin and how it functions in the ecosystem. Does it need to be required to be used within the application, and what else it is used within the ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So our coin, the Taraxa, the Terra token, it's a pretty standard layer one token, right? So being layer one, you use it for gas fees and you use it for staking, and you earn staking rewards, right? So you have a similar setup compared to some of the more mainstream layer one infrastructure out there, like Polkadot or Cosmos, all these other things. We have a target staking threshold of 67%. Once you hit that, there's an annualized return of up to maximum 20% for people who actually do stake and run nodes, right? So it's pretty standard. Now, the way that we actually think about the relationship between application and layer one is that this is a sort of a work utility token. So the more traffic the application drives the more traffic the application has, then the more demand it generates for the token, because it needs to use the network more and more. So that's the fundamental, mechanism by which applications drive demand for layer one. We do have this interesting setup in which the application itself is a semi-centralized platform, right? Because we want to make sure that we get the best advantages of both centralized systems as well as decentralized systems. So centralized systems, one of the things that it's very, very good at, well, first of all, it's very scalable and has excellent user experience. People are used to sort of the seamless user experience. But the problem, of course, with it is that it can cheat. It's a black box. No one knows what exactly it's doing with your data, with anything, right? So all you have to do is make sure that decentralized networks are used to make sure that the centralized networks are kept honest and kept transparent. So that's really our model, right? So the end user never really comes into contact with blockchain or coins or wallets or secret keys or anything like that, because we all know as soon as that's exposed to the end user, you lose 99% of your potential addressable market, right? People get scared off. They can't deal with it. So they don't need to deal with any of that. Now, the application server is the one that actually is sort of like a notary, right? It takes all the stuff that's signed by the end users and it throws it onto the blockchain on their behalf, right? And that's the one that's actually consuming these tokens and using interfacing with the Taraxa network. And later on, as we start opening up our APIs, other people can develop on top of it, and then they similarly can actually do the same thing. So we have this structure in which the application is the only thing that the application backend server is the only thing that interfaces with the Taraxa blockchain. And the more traffic the application gets, the more demand that the blockchain has, right? So.
Definitely, and that's a great symbiotic relationship. And I think both of those, application and the layer one protocol, will need to work together and grow together. And that sort of leads me to one of the last questions, because we are running short on time. But in terms of the longer-term success of adoption of the application and the blockchain, what do you think will be one of the main factors to success as you continue to grow it out?
Yeah, so we're pretty focused on this idea that an ecosystem is only successful when you are able to demonstrate that developers can make money by developing their ecosystem. It's just
Mm-hmm.
as simple as that, right? I mean, it's a no-brainer if you think about it. People don't come to your ecosystem, develop en masse because they think it's quote unquote interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a short-term interest, but long-term they have to make a living out of it. So what we're doing right now is that we are going out there building these application platforms ourselves. We're driving adoption for it. Finding customers, and we want to make sure that this application is a self standalone viable economic entity. And we need to prove that to the marketplace, right? And once we prove that to the marketplace, people will think, oh, yes, so informal agreements, that makes sense, right? That is a viable business model, right? So if you integrate this into other applications, you can also similarly, charge a premium for it because people are willing to pay for this service, right? So when we prove that out on our own application platforms, we'll have a much, much easier time and a much stronger value proposition to third-party developers and say, hey, integrate this functionality into your application stack, and you also could charge for it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense. But before you prove it, people would just be like, I don't know, like what are informal agreements? Never heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
How does that make money? I don't know, right? So you're going to have a very hard time convincing others to come and participate and grow the ecosystem. And this is really, I think, the pitfall that we're seeing a lot of layer one projects fall into
Mm-hmm.
is that they really have this sort of build it and they will come mentality, and that typically
Mm-hmm.
does not work out as the market has borne out. So
Definitely, and great answer, and I completely agree, Stephen. And for the viewers that are looking to follow along with the Layer 1 protocol as you head towards mainnet, as you release more information on the staking, and just as the application gets built out and the integrations come with more chat platforms, what's the best way for them to learn more and to get involved?
yeah, I mean, I think the easiest ways is to follow us on Twitter at Taraxa_project. So TARAXA_PROJECT. And follow us there. I mean, you can also join our Telegram at Taraxa Project as well.
Sounds great, Stephen. I will leave both of those links in the description box below for the viewers as well. All the best with Taraxa moving forward. I will definitely be following along myself, and let's follow up in the near future.
Great. It's great talking to you, Ashton, and great talking to your community as well.